What's up, nerds, and welcome back to the Helpware Nerds podcast. So, as you've probably gathered from the past couple of episodes, I've been going back through our backlog, our catalogue of old episodes, mainly to clean up some stuff and things like that, but it's brought my attention to the Percy Jackson stuff that we did in our recent episode, or the Nathan Fillion thing that we did for Valentine's Day. And for this, I was looking right through episode 3, looking at what we did in that, and seeing if, the episode still holds up, which I think it does, so if you're inclined, go check it out. But, I noticed that we talked about X-Men 97, which we can do a full breakdown or rewatch of X-Men 97 if you want here on the channel. And we can do a watch along when X-Men 97 drops its second season. I would be totally down for that. X-Men are my all-time favourite superheroes, followed closely by Spider-Man. That being said, we also took a look at the cast announcements for Fantastic Four First Steps, and I noticed we went whole hog into DC last year. We did 2 videos specifically on DC, and our superhero breakdown thing, where we looked at film media and superheroes in particular, we looked at specifically the Superman movie starring Christopher Reeves. We didn't really look at Marvel at all last year, and for someone who is a massive Marvel fan like myself, just look at the collection behind me, and there's more up there where that comes from, along with the Funko Pop of Spider-Man Pride of Place and Daredevil right there. That just didn't sit right with me, the fact that we went full hog into DC and completely ignored Fantastic Four First Steps. So that's what I'm here to rectify today. I'm going to do a full review of Fantastic Four First Steps a few months later to see if it still holds up, to see if it is the best Fantastic Four movie that we've got to date. And let me just tell you, from my personal analysis of this movie, I think it is the best Fantastic Four movie we've got to date. I will break that down, first in a non-spoilery way, and then in a spoilery way after that. But for me, yeah, I think this takes the crown as the most fantastic Fantastic Four movie. Okay, first, to start off in a non-spoiler way, so don't worry, if you haven't seen the movie, you don't have to click off the video. You can watch this bit, then go watch it. It is available on Disney+, or you can go find it wherever you get your movies and watch it now after this bit. This is my non-spoilery part. I love the fact that this part of the movie, the movie opens with a more grounded version of the Fantastic Four. We get this family, which it should be. They are Marvel's first family, the first superhero team. They are the epicenter of the Marvel Universe. They are the celebrities, the cosmic explorers of the Marvel Universe. And I feel like this movie does encapsulate that. I like how it does keep Reed as the smartest man. There, it keeps Sue as the heart of the team. It doesn't focus on Ben's monstrous side and keeps him as the anchor to the human plight, but showing him as this voice of the people amongst the Fantastic Four, who do feel very godlike as they seem to sit at this pinnacle precipice above everybody, where Ben seems to be this voice on the ground. I'll get into why when we get to the spoilery part, but in this non-spoilery part, I do like how Ben is this grounded part for the Fantastic Four, and I like how this version treats Johnny with respect. Now, I'm not saying that the Fantastic Four starring Chris Evans didn't, and I'm not even going to get into the, in my opinion, travesty that was Fantastic. No shade to any actor or producer that had anything to do with Fantastic, but we all know Fantastic wasn't it. It didn't, we don't even call it Fantastic Four as a community. We call it Fanforstic. That's why I'm calling it Fanforstic. It just, they tried to riff off of the Ultimates universe, and it didn't stick the landing at all. Just didn't work. I think this sticks the landing perfectly. It hits the Marvel Comics side. It hits like what you want from a superhero movie, and it just encapsulates what the MCU has been missing for the past couple of years. And I feel like it does treat Johnny as more of a integral part of the team rather than this horn dog comic relief character. Now, I'm not saying that Johnny isn't like this hot-headed celebrity womanizer style character, because he does have those traits, but that's not all there is to Johnny Storm. And I feel like this film does a really good way of showing other aspects of the characters that we don't really get to see in the movies that have come before. Yes, Fantastic did try and show Johnny Storm as more than just a horn dog and comic relief. It did try and show him as intelligent, but it didn't do enough to get away from that hot-headedness. I feel like this movie succeeds where Fantastic failed when it comes to Johnny Storm. But as for Reed, I feel like this version encapsulates Reed in a really good way and showing his intelligence in a really good way, while also coding it as neurodivergency and showing how, like, it's not that he's just this big brain, but he also struggles socially. And I think that this movie does a really good way of showing that without making fun of neurodivergency, because I know a lot of media tends to give smart characters, look at the Big Bang, neurodivergency, and then make it the butt of the joke. Again, look at Big Bang. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Big Bang Theory tends to make Sheldon's quirks appear very neurodivergent, even though the creators came out and said that Sheldon isn't on the spectrum or anything like that. It does appear as though Sheldon is on the spectrum, and then a lot of the things that Sheldon does that appear on the spectrum are either the butt of the joke or considered annoying, and the conflict of the episode, and are like detrimental to his character, and they actually turn the cast against him and are resolved at the end of the episode. I don't feel like the neurodivergency parts of Mr. Fantastic in this are used in that way, and again, I'll get into more of it once we get to the spoilery part and character breakdowns. I do like how they use each individual person, and Sue being the heart of the team. I feel like this kind of shifts Sue to the focus of this movie. It's kind of a minor spoiler. I know this is the non-spoilery part, but this is a minor spoiler if you haven't seen any promotional material. The reason why it's in the non-spoilery part is because it is in all the promotional material, is that Sue, throughout this film, up until like, I think it's like the midway point, is pregnant. And so it kind of makes her like the focal point of the team, and makes her the heart of the team, and everything's grounded around Sue and this pregnancy. And I do like that. I think it gives each person a distinct dynamic, while not solely locking Sue into this mother role. Like, she's still an integral part of the team, and not just this pregnant lady. Kind of what happened. They don't give her what I would call the Padme treatment. So, for those of you that don't really get what I'm saying, here, yes, Sue is pregnant throughout the film, but she's still an active member of the film. What I mean by the Padme treatment is, as soon as Padme is announced to be pregnant in episode 3, she's kind of sidelined as opposed to what she's given in episode 2, where she's given like these badass moments during the Attack of the Clones bit. She's not really given anything like that, and the only thing that she would have been given is taken out of the movie. It is a deleted scene. And they kind of just make her this MacGuffin around which is used to turn Anakin to the dark side. They could have done that with Sue in this film, where she's like this thing that's put off to the side because she's pregnant, and we can't have her injured, which would be a very, very sexist way to do it, and I'm really glad they didn't do that. Like I said, Star Wars did do that, and you shouldn't do that at all, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to give, like, preach or tell people how they should think, but to me, you shouldn't do that. I don't think I'm alone in that. You shouldn't treat people like things to be the center of a male-focused world. I feel like Star Wars did do that with Padme, and I'm really glad that they didn't do that with the Invisible Woman in this. But they could have done that, try to like a thing pushed off to the side to be Reed's focus in this movie to save Franklin and the Invisible Woman from Galactus and everything that's going on there. But they didn't, and they made her the heart of everything, and I really do love that. Also, the design of Galactus, thank God it wasn't a butthole in space that like what we got from the Rise of the Silver Surfer. This movie understood the assignment and gave us what we've all been craving since that movie came out. And as for anyone that was being negative about the gender switch between Norrin Radd's Silver Surfer to Charlotte Ball's Silver Surfer, yes, there's comic book precedent for Charlotte Ball being a Silver Surfer of another universe, so this isn't a gender swap. Just want to get that out there straight away. This isn't a gender swap. She is not Norrin Radd, she is Charlotte Ball. They are two different characters, and this is a completely different universe. So we could even get Norrin Radd later on in the MCU, and that's the MCU's equivalent of the Surfer, whereas Charlotte Ball was the Fantastic Four's universe's version of the Silver Surfer. Who knows? We don't really know what Marvel's cooking. I'm not sure they know what they're cooking beyond Doomsday. But as for this, I think it was a really good change. I think it gave the dynamic between her and Johnny a really good twist. But that's that for non-spoilers and everything. Let's get into the spoilery part of this review and see what I thought while we are spoiling the film. So I will spoil it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, you've had your countdown. If you're still here, you're here for spoilers, so you've been warned, basically. So, obviously, we've got the whole... I love the fact that this movie does not give us the origin story again. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. We do kind of get the origin story as a montage. And we get this whole... like rogues gallery as like this whole new story. The Fantastic Four have been active for 4 years. Bit on the nose, but also a nice touch to have had it be 4 years, and they are the Fantastic Four. Nice touch there, but also kind of weird that they've done that. Clever. Let me know what you guys think. Was that clever or was that just cheesy? I'm a bit shaky on that, whether I thought it was clever or cheesy. But hey ho. I do like though that it makes it feel lived in. It makes it feel human. It makes it feel historic. It doesn't make it feel like a universe we're just getting dropped in and we have to learn everything about. It speed runs us through it, but also in a way that's quite quick for us to digest and easily catches us up to the point where we are now integrated very subtly and very quickly into a world that's established and feels very domestic and very human. And I absolutely love this 1960s futuristic retro Jetson vibe that they've got going for this universe. It feels alien to the MCU, which fantastic. It makes it, pun intended, it makes it feel awesome. I love that it makes Herbie and the Fantastic Car and everything that we get with the Fantastic Four feel legit to be able to exist in this universe, because of course it would. It's retro 60s futurist. So it doesn't have to fit this modern Stark-esque tech universe that we've got used to with the MCU. We can have this whole Jetson vibe, and man, does that feel Fantastic Four. It feels so much better than the cheesy version we got with Chris Evans and everyone that we got in the early 2000s, and a lot better than the gritty Ultimate Universe trying to capitalize on the gritty superhero that Nolan popularized with Dark Knight that we got from Fan Four Stick. This feels genuine Fantastic Four to me, and a proper realized world. Then we get their family dinner scene, and chef's kiss. The family dynamics are fully on display here. Ben being able to be the first one to notice that Sue and Reed are acting weird just shows how good of a friend he is to both of them, and being able to read them like a book, just it gives you Ben's whole character in a bite. You literally just get it straight off. Ben is the empath of the group. He's the one that's the most, despite being a golem, the most human. He's able to pick it up straight away. And then Johnny's little rip on Reed. Their dynamic just feels so brother-in-law-esque. A little brother ripping on the brother-in-law. I love it. I love their dynamic. It just the whole backwards and forwards between Johnny, it's short. It's not prolonged. It's quick and it's fun, and it's just this whole quick moment of Johnny and Reed being brother-in-laws, and it feels familial. And they are Marvel's first family. Like I said that in the non-spoiler part, they are Marvel's first family. And the fact that they've been able to encapsulate this family dynamic in such this quick, short span of time is great. It does bring me to a point that I don't like, though. Once we get this whole dynamic of them finding out they're pregnant, we get a second montage in the span of two. It feels like 5 minutes. I don't actually know how long it is in film. I didn't time it, but it feels like 5 minutes. We had the whole montage introducing us to the world, and now we've got this whole montage of Franklin's been announced to the world, and, well, the baby, we don't know it's Franklin yet, but the baby's been announced to the world, and Reed's doing all these tests, and the world is betting on, will it be a boy, will it be a girl, it's not going to be twins, and all this is going on, and it's all very fast-paced, and there's too many montages. There's another one a bit later on in the film where they're when they're building the whole machine that's supposed to teleport the Earth. Again, a very quick montagey thing. Montages are cool, especially when you look at Rocky Balboa and things like that, or like I said, the beginning where it helps world build the world. Too many speed runs your runtime and makes you feel like you haven't had time to digest the movie. And that's how I feel coming from this film after rewatching it for this review. Yes, I really enjoyed this film. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys. I enjoyed this film. I think it's one of the best things Marvel has put out recently. up there with like some of in this phase, some of the best ones of this phase being like Shang-Chi, Thunderbolts. This, I can't really name many more that I think reach this pinnacle. But like, I personally liked the Eternals. I know a lot of people didn't, but I personally did. Uh, but for movie wise, those are like the ones. Oh, and Spider Man, No Way Home. Um, I always forget that that's a Marvel in this phase, so sorry about that. But like those movies are like the top echelon of this phase of Marvel movies, and I do feel like that reaches up there, but this has too many montages. It does feel like they were lacking on thingy, and they probably could have done with maybe the montage at the beginning and the montage at the end, because the montage at the end makes sense. Speed run them building the thing, I get that. But you didn't need to add the whole thing. You could have stretched that out. But beyond that, I don't really get the whole why they did so many montages. It does make the pacing feel a little rushed. Because I did think that for a film that's just under 2 hours, this film did feel really quick. It did feel like we dashed to the finish line. Like it's good, but it feels dashed. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me on this, because I'm not sure if it was just me, how I was watching it, my perception, but for me, I did think that the pacing was quick on this film. So, but anyway, back to what I was saying. They announce Franklin. We get the whole betting thing, and then we get the whole moment of the surfer arriving, and I think the surfer arriving was perfect. I think the surfer arriving was the amount of eerie, super, fantastic, and cosmic that it needed to be. I like how Sue's the one that steps up and says that they are the protectors of the world. I like how they all like step up and she just announces to the world, Galactus is coming. You're all marked for death. The speech she gives is eerie, and to be honest, if I was in that world, I would be scared too. And I do think that is a way you introduce the Herald of Galactus. That is the way you introduce a villain in a movie. That feels impactful. Again, I feel like we could have had time to breathe in the world before the surfer showed up. I do feel like, again, that was speedrun. This film did feel shorter than it needed to be, but it was cool. Watching Johnny chase after her felt very reminiscent of the Rise of the Silver Surfer when we saw Chris Evans' version do it. And I do like the fact that that felt reminiscent, because that's one of my favourite scenes from that film. But I did like when she took off and all that stuff. That was really cool. And then Reed and that immediately going off to try and plan for Galactus, and Johnny being the one to be like, hey, look, she spoke to me, there's something about this. But then the family dynamic coming back in, and then being like, yeah, of course you like her, Johnny. Like, she's in your words, a pretty alien from space. Your two favourite things. So they still keep that, like, womanizer part of Johnny, and it makes him less believable. Now, the part I like really, really like from this, is he's blown off by Ben and Reed, but then they clinch it with the sister and brother dynamic of Sue and Johnny, because he's blown off by those, but Sue goes to find him afterwards, and he's immediately big sister mode. Right, what were you actually saying? And their dynamic shines through, and I love this because it shows that, like, yes, they are a big knit family of four, but Sue and Johnny are brother and sister, and their relationship is familial on a level that's not familial with the rest of them. Yet you've got that familiar relationship with Sue and Reed as well, but that's a different relationship to what Johnny and Sue have. And that older sister instinct that Sue has to go check on Johnny and actually listen to him and hear him out, it feels great. I love that whole interaction and that whole, like, moment. And then the fact that Reed comes through in the end and builds the suits that Johnny's been asking for, that we get hinted at earlier in the film for the space mission, and Johnny just giving him a hug, and then the whole coming back full family moment again. I take back every bad thing I've said to you about you in private to myself. That was funny. I found that funny. I don't know if anybody else found that funny, but I found that funny. I really like that. Like I said, I like the dynamics of the family. And the montage part with Ben, I like Ben going to the suburbs and getting food for Sue and interacting with the teacher. I don't think we actually get her name. If we do, I'm sorry, I forgot it. And the kids, that's what I mean about they use Ben as the anchor to ground other Fantastic Four, because we don't really see the rest of the four interact with the population. Reed only interacts with the press and the other family members. Sue interacts with the UN and the other family members, and Johnny only seems to interact with the other family members. We don't see them interact with anybody else outside of, like, their unit and what they're doing. Ben is the only one we see interact with the kids, with the population when they turn on them after they come back from space, and the teacher. I think it's a really good way to show that Ben is, like, the grounded one. And as I said before in the non-spoilery part, I love this juxtaposition from the other two movies where Ben is like this monster and hates himself because of the transformation. There's even a scene where, before they go into space, where Reed is feeling self-pity and being like, it's my fault, I should have seen this coming, about the suits, the old suits that led to their mutations, or changes, should I say. They're not mutants. They mutate. But Ben's like, whoa, stop right there. You are not as smart as you think you are. No one could have seen this coming. You can't even drive, Stretch. And I love that interaction. I think it's peak for them. It shows their friendship. It shows their understanding. And it shows that we've moved. They're at a point where Ben, while he might not have fully moved past the fact that he's now a golem, he's moved to a place of understanding that it wasn't anybody's fault. And I like the fact that we've got past this point in the Thing's history of blaming everyone for what he is, and we've got to this grounded version of the Thing. And I like how they show he's the one that goes out into the community, and he's the community person. Now, we do eventually see Sue address the community, and that is another point that I have to have a down for, but I'll get to that in a minute. So eventually they go off into space, and they use the sublight machine and go to light speed. That sequence was really cool. Again, seeing Galactus' ship, really, really cool. Better than the black hole swirling vortex thing. Like I said, nobody liked that. If you did like that, you are an outlier. I don't think I know a single Marvel fan that liked the big swirling vortex from Rise of the Silver Surfer. So if you did like it, let me know in the comments, because I've never met someone that actually liked it. But as I was saying, I do like all that, and we get Galactus' true origin from being before the universe was even created, the previous universe, and then becoming the devourer of worlds and all of that stuff. It's such a great thing, and him being the one to notice that Franklin is a cosmic being capable of taking on his hunger, that was cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're more into the Fantastic Four than I am. Like I said, my go-tos are X-Men and Spider-Man, with a little bit of Hulk. I do have a lot of comics behind me, but my go-tos tend to be X-Men and Spider-Man. I believe Franklin's powers are usually tied to the cosmic control rod from the Negative Zone with Annihilus. I think he can control the power cosmic, but I don't think he's like usually filled with the power cosmic. So that does feel like a subtle change, not a big change, but a subtle change that they've done to his powers in the MCU alternate reality thing that we've got going on in Fantastic Four First Steps. Again, if I'm not 100% on Franklin's powers, let me know. I'm not that well versed in Franklin. The only thing I know about Franklin Richards is that he was deemed a mutant, and then it turns out that he was using his reality warping alteration powers to give himself an X gene, and that he's not actually a mutant. That was revealed during the Krakoan era. I do know that part of Franklin's history. That's the main thing I know about Franklin Richards from the comics. So let me know if I got anything about Franklin wrong down below. But that is what I mainly know about Franklin. That, and he once made Galactus his herald, very similar to how the Surfer is Galactus's herald. So that's pretty cool. That was to fight Mad Celestials, I believe. So yeah. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I like that, and I like, which I didn't catch on my first watch, that it was Galactus that induced the Invisible Woman's labor. So therefore, I don't know how I didn't notice it. I probably was eating popcorn or something. But like Galactus being the one to induce the labor means that technically Franklin was born premature. So Franklin Richards is a preemie. That was not by a lot, based on what he looked, based on the size of him when he's born and the fact that he didn't need an incubator or anything, but he is a preemie based on the fact that he wasn't born at his natural date, or didn't induce himself, because it is the baby that sends the signals, as far as my understanding of that goes. I am not a doctor, nor am I versed in childbirth, so take what I just said with a pinch of salt. So yeah, but hey ho, that is an interesting fact that I didn't quite catch on my first watch. Then we get an epic fight scene between the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer. I absolutely love this. Like, it just shows off like them working together. I do love this, and it does show how outclassed they all are against the Surfer. Like, if it came down to it, they weren't going to beat the Surfer. Not in that instance, at least. So, I do like that. But it does feel really good. I do like how it all comes together in that moment. And then they get back to the ship, and she chases them through light speed, and they have to go through a neutron star and time dilator and all that stuff. And man, that sequence was epic. Sue giving birth in zero gravity was awesome. And the one thing that I thought about while watching the scene was my mum when I went to watch it originally in the cinema, talking about how did she give birth in her underwear. When I rewatched it, I realized it's a spacesuit, so she probably wasn't wearing any. Um, that's a really weird comment to make, but it's just something that I remember my mum going on about throughout the entire first watch of the movie. Like, we see her kick off the spacesuit, but we don't see her, like, thingy. And she just kept rabbiting on about how fantastic it was that she was able to give birth in her underwear. It's a really weird and niche thing, but that is just something for you, Mum. I'm throwing that in there for you. Hey, don't come for me. That is literally something my mum talked about for ages. I think she even brought it up in the podcast. I don't know if I cut it from the podcast quiz episode, but I do know that my older sister, top nerd Ashley, did bring up that wasn't the most fantastical part. The most fantastical part is that Franklin was born and then arrives on Earth with full head control. Which, yeah, gotta hand it to her. By the time they get to Earth, he is only 1 month old. And he has full head control. That is fantastic, for lack of a better word. By the end of the movie, which is, they say it's been a year from my rewatch. It's like when they flash forward. It's really funny because Franklin is supposed to not be able to sit up on his own. That's why they won't put him in the Fantastic Four outfit with the 5 on it, because they're saying he can't even sit up on his own. Yet this kid has full head control and has had full head control since he was 1 month old. Okay, but hey ho, they get back to Earth and then they immediately tell everybody the truth. They don't even give themselves time to think about it. Like, I don't think they had time on that ship to think about the fact that they needed to come up with a way to tell people that they didn't stop Galactus, or that they weren't going to sacrifice their child. But hey ho. Then they immediately go back to doing what they normally do, and Ben tells them about how bad it's getting out there, and we get to the bit where I said is a down, and it's when Sue goes outside with Franklin, and the rest of the 4 eventually join her, and gives the whole speech. She talks about her family history, about how Mum died in a car crash, her father tried his best, and all that stuff, and how she says that she won't sacrifice a baby for the world, but she won't sacrifice the world for a baby. And the entire world apparently hears that and turns around and is like on the Fantastic Four side. Cool. Unrealistic. Now, I know this is a superhero movie, but this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about pacing issues. Because of the pacing of this film, that turnaround happens like this, and we don't. The explanation they give is so quick, so outlandish, that it just doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Not with the hatred that's been spewed around the Fantastic Four because they wouldn't give up Franklin, which is a good character study about how scared and somewhat selfish the human race can be when we're terrified of our own imminent deaths, because they were willing to sacrifice an innocent baby for their own salvation without even trying anything else first. Yes, Galactus said he would spare the Earth for a baby, but that doesn't mean the Fantastic Four couldn't come up with another way around it. Like, their first instance failed. That doesn't mean they couldn't come up with another way around it, which they eventually do. So, that's what I'm saying by why I said the Earth was a little bit selfish. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't have been one of them that were like, why didn't you go with the kid? Because in that instance, you don't know how you would react. You'd like to think you'd be one of the people voting for reason and being like, why would you give up your child? This is insanity, like how I'm advocating for right now. But in that instance, when a giant space god is threatening to eat your planet, you don't know how you would react. I don't know how I would react. Nobody does. So, we can say we know, but we don't. But beyond that, like I said, I think that turnaround was really quick and ridiculous. Beyond that, the whole calculations and stuff, the moving the planet, it's an interesting idea. But Reed, you moved one egg once, and it shut down the entire planet, the entire Baxter building. Sorry, and you want to do that to the whole planet. I know you have to turn off your brain and expend disbelief or whatever, but sometimes you have to be a little bit logical on your like save the world plans. And this one threw logic to the wayside and went, nah. So yeah, I'm gonna call it with that. That one was utter and total bullshit. I'm sorry, I can't buy that. I don't know if you guys can, but for me, no. Um. Anyway, moving on from that, we get the whole thing, and then Charlotte Ball shows up and destroys them all, and we get my favorite Johnny Storm moment where he surprises not only the world but the four, the Sue, Ben, and Reed, where he translates and speaks in her native language, talks to Charlotte Ball, names her, and shows her past sins. It was a fantastic moment showcasing his intelligence. This is literally the most intelligent Johnny Storm we have ever had on screen. It is genuinely, absolutely, and astronomically perfect. I loved this to no end. There is nothing more I can say. Mwah, chef's kiss. Like I said, the Michael B. Jordan version was intelligent, but it was nowhere near this version of the Human Torch. Mwah, I just, enough said. And then, because of that, we get the most pinnacle Reed and Sue moment ever on screen. This is why I said I think this is one of the most faithful adaptations of the Fantastic Four. Their argument feels so fantastical, so amazing for them. It's just, Reed comes up with a solution to stop Galactus. He knows that if they rewrite the power to the one portal they have left, they could stop Galactus. They could stop him, they could teleport him to the edges of the universe, and he's gone. He won't be able to come back. But then there's, how do you do it? He knows Franklin's the way, but he doesn't want to do it. He knows it's wrong. There's no emotion in it. He just knows it's wrong. And then there's Sue. She realizes Reed knows how to do it. He knows it's the only way. She knows he knows it's the only way. And their argument feels so Reed and Sue coded. It's amazing. His intelligence is telling him one thing, his logic is telling him one thing, but he's struggling with the social part and the emotional part of it. It's just all perfect. This whole thing is all perfect. This whole Reed and Sue thing is perfect. I absolutely love how Reed and Sue are portrayed in this moment, and that argument just feels like the pinnacle of them from the comics. Sue being Reed's emotional support, but also having a limit, and Franklin being that limit was, and Reed understanding that, but not quite grasping it. again, linking back to that neurodivergency that I feel like was brought to this version. Just wow. The final battle with Galactus, you can see why they set them up as a team with experience. They didn't have to like show them learning these moves. They knew how to fight as a team. Johnny and Ben with the oil tankard, uh, Johnny blinding Galactus, Sue pushing Galactus, Reed using his elastic powers. It was all good. I wish there was a little bit more to them fighting him, but it was still really cool. And I'm gonna say I cringed when Galactus almost ripped Reed in half by stretching him. That was, it's sickening. Oh, it still makes me cringe now thinking about it. But that absolute mum strength, the strength they say can allow a mum to lift a car off of a child, that came through when Sue Storm heard Franklin crying and she just lifted power through and pushed Galactus back through that portal. That was absolute pinnacle. Her pushing herself to the limit because she could hear Franklin. I feel like this solidifies the fact that this movie was Sue Storm's movie. We just had the other Fantastic Four members there as salad dressing, but they weren't forgotten about. This was just her movie. And she even got to do the Marvel backbend, popularized by Elizabeth Olsen. It was so cool. Like, I absolutely love this. It was so fun. But I did tear up both times in the original viewing and in my rewatch when Johnny said, "Tell Franklin his uncle loves him." I don't know if it's because I'm an uncle now myself or if it's just because that moment is emotional and it made me think of when Johnny got trapped in the negative zone. I think it's called the negative zone. I might be wrong, but Annihilus's dimension anyway. And everyone thought he was dead. And and he's like gonna do it. And then Charlebolt comes in to the rescue and defeats Galactus and pushes him back through the portal. Absolute pinnacle. Oh, like I said, I did have some nitpicks. I didn't really touch on the fact that Mole Man was in this. It was a good add-on, but wasn't really necessary. They could have evacuated the people anywhere, and Subterranea was actually a really dangerous place to have evacuated them, as seen by the facts that they kept cutting to them whenever Galactus walked there. He could have literally suffocated everybody just by walking on the ground. But hey ho. I did like Galactus's full design. But I wish we'd have got a little bit more from Galactus. Yeah, we got to see him in his ship and we got to see a little bit of a fight with him, but it would have been cool to see a little bit more from him. The devouring of the world that we did see was really cool. But again, the pacing didn't really allow time for that to sink in. I think the pacing is the biggest issue for me here, because while it was really good, we didn't have a lot of time to breathe through the movie, and there wasn't a lot of setup for Galactus coming. She just showed up, and then it was Galactus is coming, and then there was a lot of like prolonged stuff before Galactus showed up. And then they defeated Galactus pretty quickly. Like, once he did show up. It was cool. And it was cool to see Franklin use his cosmic powers to resurrect Sue at the end. And her have stars in her eyes. Very similar to the stars in the eyes that I think it's Gore gets when he resurrects his daughter in Love and Thunder. Love or hate that movie. So, hey ho. But overall, I think this was a really good movie, and that post-credit scene does get me wondering, is Franklin somehow connected to Doomsday? Are they setting up like a hit? Is he gonna replace the Beyonder for how Doom gets the powers to create Battle World and Secret Wars and all that stuff? I don't really know. Obviously, they did a time jump between the end of the movie and the post-credit scene, so Franklin is now 4 years old, which means the Fantastic Four have been active for 8 years. We don't really know much about what's happened in that 4 year time jump. All we know is that like Franklin seems to have an knack for science. One of his favorite books, allegedly, is The Origin of the Species. So could that be why mutants are involved? Who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? But it could explain why the Fantastic Four ship was seen at the end of the Thunderbolts, or should I say New Avengers. Who knows what's going to happen with the Doomsday stuff, but to me, I really did enjoy Fantastic Four First Steps. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps were. Am I overglazing this movie? Am I overlooking some of its flaws? Because I could be. I don't know. I've recently rewatched it and I really did enjoy it. So it could be rose-tinted goggles or recency bias that's infecting this review. I'm not sure. But for me, the biggest issue and the main issue that I saw was too many montages and pacing. But with that being said, I'm going to call this video to an end. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and most of all, stay nerdy.